Hello everyone and welcome back. As you all are aware of, we had started with the drugs which are acting on the autonomic nervous system. So autonomic nervous system comprises of the parasympathetic system and the sympathetic system, as you all aware of what these two systems are, where they innervate in the body and what kind of effects they show. You must have studied under the anatomy and the physiology. So in this particular unit we will be studying the drugs which can alter these two systems, okay, either by interacting through the receptors or by alteration of the availability of the neurotransmitters at these two systems. At the parasympathetic system, acetylcholine is a transmitter, as we had seen in the earlier chapter which we had started, that is the parasympathomimetics or cholinergic drugs or cholinomimetic drugs, okay, which was the first chapter which we had started. So cholinergic drugs, to revise with, these are the drugs which produce the actions similar to that of acetylcholine. Now there are two ways by which these particular drugs can produce the action similar to acetylcholine, which is the neurotransmitter at parasympathetic system, that is either by interacting with the receptor and stimulating them, the cholinergic receptors, okay. So these type of drugs are known as cholinergic agonists, and the second mechanism by which these particular drugs can act are the inhibition of the cholinesterase enzyme, which is involved in the metabolism of acetylcholine. So it increases the availability of the ACH, and that's how it produces the cholinergic effect, okay. So to move on with the next chapter, that is the anticholinergic drugs, okay, anticholinergic drugs. So as the name implies, these are the drugs which produces the action opposite to that of cholinergic drugs, or they oppose the actions of the cholinergic drugs, okay. Now as we have seen in the earlier chapter under the cholinergic transmission, we have seen that there are two types of cholinergic receptors, the muscarinic receptors and the nicotinic receptors, which are further subdivided. Like muscarinic receptors are subdivided into M1, M2, M3, M4 and M5, out of which the first three are quite important and we have studied in detail. And the second type, that is nicotinic cholinergic receptors, are further divided into two types, that is NN, which are found on ganglia, and the NM, which are found on the mainly the skeletal muscles. Now these drugs, anticholinergic drugs, these are actually the muscarinic receptor antagonists, okay. So these are also known as muscarinic receptor antagonists. So it is very clear that these drugs act by blocking the muscarinic type of cholinergic receptors, okay. Apart from this, these drugs are also known as atropinic drugs or parasympatholytic drugs, okay. So the cholinergic drugs were called as parasympathomimetics because they used to mimic the action of the parasympathetic system, as if the parasympathetic system was stimulated. So these drugs, anticholinergic drugs, are known as parasympatholytics because they block the action or oppose the action of the parasympathetic system, okay. So these are also known as parasympatholytics. So coming to the outline of the chapter, we are going to cover the classification of the drugs which are used as anticholinergic drugs. Then we are going to cover the pharmacology of atropine in detail as a prototype drug. Apart from these, we will see in brief what are the different atropine substitutes, which are those different alternatives to atropine which have emerged and which can be used for different purposes. Next, we are going to cover the side effects and toxicity of anticholinergic drugs, then the contraindications, interactions, how they will interact with the administration, if they are administered along with the other drugs, and the uses of anticholinergic drugs. Okay. Now, to start with the definition of anticholinergic drugs. Now, basically, anticholinergic drugs, when this term comes to your mind, actually these should oppose all the actions of the parasympathetic system, right? Now, parasympathetic system involves the muscarinic actions as well as the nicotinic actions, as we have seen, right? So it mediates some actions through the muscarinic receptors and certain actions through the nicotinic receptors. So when you talk about anticholinergic drugs, they should be blocking both the muscarinic as well as the nicotinic receptors, right? But that is not the case. Now, conventionally, when you talk about anticholinergic drugs, these are those which can block the actions of ACH on the autonomic effectors and the CNS, which are exerted through the muscarinic receptors. Okay, so such drugs are only categorized as anticholinergic drugs. Okay, those which block the actions of ACH, which are mediated through the muscarinic receptors, are categorized over here. Whereas nicotinic blockers, okay, nicotinic receptors also cholinergic receptors, right? So these are also anticholinergic drugs, but these are usually referred to as ganglionic blockers and neuromuscular blockers, the ones which block the NN receptors. Okay, nicotinic receptors are of two types, NM and NN, depending upon the location. Now, NN receptors are basically found on the autonomic ganglia, sympathetic as well as the parasympathetic. So, these drugs which block the NN receptors or antagonize the NN type of nicotinic receptors, these are known as ganglionic blockers. Okay, so these are categorized separately. And the drugs which can block the NM subtype of receptor, which is found on the skeletal muscles, such type of drugs are known as neuromuscular blockers. Okay, so this particular part, neuromuscular blockers, it is discussed under the chapter skeletal muscle relaxants. Okay, skeletal muscle relaxants can act both by peripheral mechanism and by central mechanism. So, peripherally acting muscle relaxants, one of the class is the neuromuscular blocker. So, it is best discussed over there in that particular chapter. Okay, so when we talk about anticholinergic drugs, we are talking about only drugs, those drugs which can block the muscarinic receptors. These will be considered later on as a separate chapter. Okay. Now, when we consider anticholinergic drugs, atropine is the prototype drug of this particular class. Okay, so this is highly selective towards the muscarinic receptor at the lower doses. Okay, at higher doses, however, the selectivity is lost, but at normal doses, it is highly selective towards blocking the muscarinic receptor. And if you talk about all the anticholinergic drugs, these are competitive antagonists. So they will compete with acetylcholine for the same site on the receptors, and they will bind themselves with high affinity and prevent acetylcholine from binding to that particular receptor. So there is a competition between the agonist and the antagonist for the same site on the cholinergic receptors. Okay. So coming to the classification of anticholinergic drugs, first class is the natural alkaloids. So as the name implies, these are the alkaloids obtained from the natural source. There are two drugs over here, atropine, which is a prototype drug, and the hyoscine. Hyoscine is also known as scopolamine. Second class is the semi-synthetic derivatives. So obviously, as the name implies, these are the semi-synthetic derivatives of the natural alkaloids. So these includes examples like homatropine, atropine, methonitrate, hyoscine, butyl bromide, ipratropium bromide, and tiotropium bromide. And the third class is the synthetic compound. So these are the drugs which are totally synthesized in the laboratories. Now these are further sub-classified depending upon what you can say their uses. Okay. Now as the name implies, the first subclass under synthetic compounds is mydriatics. Okay. So what the name signifies? Mydriatics means those drugs which can produce mydriasis, or those drugs which can dilate the pupil, so increase the pupil size. So such type of drugs are known as mydriatics. Okay, so based upon their uses, main use, it is categorized. Okay, so first subclass is mydriatics. There are two examples, cyclopentolate and tropicamide. Next is the anti-secretory, anti-spasmodic. Okay, so anti-secretory means those drugs which can reduce the secretions from several glands, and these drugs also have anti-spasmodic property. That is the spasm or the colic due to the contraction of the smooth muscles. This can be relieved. Okay, anti-spasmodic. Okay, so spasm is relieved by these particular drugs. So these are again subclassified depending upon their structural features. Those which contain the quaternary compounds, these include propenthalin, oxyphenonium, clidinium, pipenzolate, methyl bromide, isopropamide and glycopyrrolate. And those which include tertiary amines in their structure, these are dicyclomine, valethamate and pyrazepine. Then the third subclass under synthetic drugs is vesicoselective drugs. Vesicoselective meaning these drugs are selective towards those receptors which are present in the bladder, specifically the urinary bladder. The cholinergic drugs, which are the muscarinic receptors which are present in the bladder. We have seen certain cholinergic drugs, they act on the bladder, right? So voiding of urine can take place. So such type of receptors which are found in the bladder, these are selectively blocked by vesicoselective drugs. Okay, so examples include oxybutynin, flavoxate and tolterodine. Then the fourth subclass is anti-Parkinsonians. As the name implies, these are the drugs which will be beneficial in the treatment of Parkinson's disease. Okay, which is basically categorized or characterized by the tremors, rigidity, hypokinesia. Okay, the talking difficulty, the gait, posture is affected in such individuals. Okay, so anti-Parkinsonian, over there we have seen that in Parkinson's disease there is an imbalance between the dopaminergic system and the cholinergic system. So cholinergic system is hyperactive over there. So anticholinergic drugs are given in the treatment of the Parkinson's disease to maintain the balance. Okay, so such type of drugs include trihexyphenidyl, it is also known as benzexol, procyclidine is the next example, and biperidine. Okay, so this is to do with the classification of anticholinergic drugs or the muscarinic blockers. Okay, apart from these drugs which we have seen just now, there are several other classes of drugs which possess the anticholinergic property. These drugs can also block the muscarinic receptors, cholinergic muscarinic receptors. These include tricyclic antidepressant, TCAs. This is a type or the class of drug which is used in the treatment of depression, as the name implies. Then the phenothiazines used for the treatment of the psychosis or schizophrenia. Antihistaminic drugs, those which can block the histaminic receptors. Okay, so such type of drugs can also act on the cholinergic receptors and block them. And disopyramide is also another drug which is having anticholinergic property. Okay, specifically anti-muscarinic action. They can block the muscarinic cholinergic receptors. Okay, so we will focus mainly on the drugs which we have seen under the classification over here. These also have anticholinergic effects, but usually they tend to produce the anticholinergic side effects by binding to these cholinergic receptors or blocking these cholinergic receptors rather than having the therapeutic properties. Okay, now the anticholinergic drugs, in the first class we have seen natural alkaloids, right? So these natural alkaloids are mainly found in the plants belonging to Solanaceae family. Okay. And usually the levoisomers, these are more active than the dextroisomers. Now atropine, it is a racemic mixture which contains both levo as well as dextroisomers, and scopolamine, the second drug, or the hyoscine as we have seen, it contains only the levoisomer, L-hyoscine it is, whereas atropine, it is a racemic mixture. Okay. Now coming to the pharmacological actions of atropine as a prototype drug. Now pharmacological actions of these anticholinergic drugs, you can predict them very well if you know the actions of parasympathetic system, or we have discussed the actions of acetylcholine under cholinergic drugs, right? So if you can recall all those, these particular actions will be very easier to understand. Okay, so if you all have not gone through the actions of acetylcholine, the links are given, you can refer to those videos wherein the pharmacological actions of acetylcholine are discussed, the muscarinic actions are discussed. So mainly the muscarinic actions will be blocked by this atropine. Okay, so coming to the first action on the CNS. Okay, now these natural alkaloids which we have seen, atropine and the hyoscine, these drug can cross the blood-brain barrier and they can produce the CNS effect. In case of acetylcholine, we have seen that as such it cannot cross the blood-brain barrier, no CNS effects, overt CNS effects can be seen, but ACH as a neurotransmitter also it is released in the CNS, wherein it may mediate certain CNS functions in the CNS. Okay, so these drugs, anticholinergic drugs, the atropine and the hyoscine, the natural alkaloids, basically they have the actions on the CNS because they can cross the blood-brain barrier. So atropine, it has the overall CNS stimulant action. Okay, but these particular actions, these are not appreciable at lower doses. Okay, so because their entry into the brain, it is restricted. So at lower doses, it will produce only the peripheral effects. Okay, whereas the hyoscine, which is the next example, it produces the central effects even at the lower doses. Mainly it produces the depressant action. Okay, now coming to the actions of atropine, let us see what are those different actions which are produced on CNS. Atropine, it can stimulate the medullary centers. There are vital centers in your medulla, right? So those centers can be stimulated by atropine. Okay, such as the vagal center, which is involved in the maintenance or regulation of the heart rate. Okay, then the respiratory center, which is controlling your respiratory rate, and the vasomotor center, which is basically controlling the diameters of your blood vessels. So it is regulating the blood pressure. Okay, so all these vital centers which are located in the medulla, these can be stimulated by the atropine. However, it depresses the vestibular excitation. Okay, vestibular excitation, which is shown during the say if you are traveling, okay, in a Ghat section specifically. So there will be a disturbance in the equilibrium and the vestibular excitation can take place. Impulses will be generated, they will be carried, relayed through the CTZ, NTS to the vomiting center, and they will induce the vomiting sensation. Okay, so atropine, it can depress this vestibular excitation. So as a result of this, it has anti-motion sickness property. Okay, that is, it has anti-emetic property. Vomiting can be controlled by atropine. It has anti-motion. Motion sickness is the vomiting which is associated with the traveling. So it is not seen in all, but in few individuals. Okay, they cannot bear the traveling. Okay, so vestibular disturbances in the equilibrium can take place and it can induce the vomiting. So such type of vomiting can be controlled by atropine. Then apart from this, it can also block the cholinergic overactivity in the basal ganglia. And as a result of this blockage of the cholinergic overactivity, it can suppress the tremor and rigidity which is associated with the Parkinsonism. That's how it is effective in the Parkinson's disease. Okay, so cholinergic drugs. Okay, but the higher doses, these will result in some deleterious effect, maybe cortical excitation, restlessness, disorientation, hallucinations, delirium, or even the respiratory depression and coma can also be produced at higher doses. Then next system which is affected is the CVS. Now separately the actions are discussed on the heart and the blood vessels. Now coming to the actions on the heart, the most prominent action of atropine is the tachycardia, that is increase in the heart rate. Now why it is producing tachycardia? If you can remember the M2 receptors which are located on the SA node, it hyperpolarizes the SA node, right, and it produces the bradycardia, correct? The action under the acetylcholine as we have seen. So what atropine will do, it can block these M2 receptors on the SA node, okay, through which the vagal tone is decreasing the heart rate. So what will happen? Opposite action will be seen, that is increase in the heart rate, that is tachycardia will be seen. Also atropine abbreviates the refractory period of the AV node, okay, and it facilitates the AV conduction. Under acetylcholine we have seen that AV conduction is also slowed down. Okay, so atropine will have the opposite action. It will facilitate the AV conduction. Then coming to the effects on the BP. Now as such cholinergic impulses, these are not involved in maintenance of the vascular tone. So as such atropine does not have any consistent or marked effect on the BP, but indirectly due to certain actions it can alter the blood pressure. Say it produces tachycardia, right? We have seen just now the atropine, it produces tachycardia. Also the vasomotor center is stimulated in the CNS, right? So both these actions are responsible for the rise in BP. Whereas histamine release, it can cause the histamine release. Histamine is one of the autocoils. Also the direct vasodilator action. Okay, directly it can produce the vasodilatation, that is dilatation of the blood vessels due to the direct action of the atropine, okay, on the smooth muscles of the blood vessels. So as a result of these two actions, it tends to lower the BP. Obviously histamine release also produces vasodilatation, also direct vasodilatory action is there. So obviously the blood pressure will be lowered by atropine. Okay. Also atropine blocks the vasodepressor action of the cholinergic agonists also. Okay. Then coming to the effects on the eye. Okay. As we have seen under the cholinergic drugs or the parasympathetic system, it supplies the ciliary muscles, right? Okay. So it will supply the muscles of the iris. There are two muscles present in the iris, the ones which are present or ones which are placed in a circular manner, these are known as sphincter pupillae, and the ones which are placed radially, these are known as dilator pupillae. Now basically the parasympathetic system, it supplies the sphincter pupillae or the circularly placed muscles. So when parasympathetic system is stimulated, or the effects of the acetylcholine we have seen, or the cholinergic agonist, we have seen that they can bind to the muscarinic receptors which are located on these circular muscles. These will contract. So as a result of contraction of these circular muscles or sphincter pupillae, which is produced by muscarinic agonist or anticholinesterases, it will result in the miosis, right, is what we have seen under the cholinergic drugs. So what action will be produced by atropine? Obviously it will block the muscarinic receptors which are located on the circular muscles, and it will result in relaxation of the sphincter pupillae, anti-muscarinic action. So it will result in the dilatation of the pupils, and that action is known as mydriasis. Also the sphincter pupillae, these are paralyzed, ciliary muscles are also paralyzed, so it produces abolition of the light reflex and cycloplasia. Now this is quite a long lasting action, and because of this abolition of the light reflex and cycloplasia, it will result in photophobia. So since the pupils are dilated, because the circular muscles are relaxed, more and more light will enter your eyes, right? Your pupil size, it controls the amount of light which is entering your eyes, correct? So when you are in a bright light, your pupils will constrict to restrict the amount of light which is entering your eyes. And when you move to a dark room, your pupils will dilate to gather more light. Okay, so now here what has happened? Mydriasis has taken place and light reflex is abolished. That is, these ciliary muscles are totally paralyzed. So as a result of this, even if extra light enters your eyes, your pupils will not constrict. Okay, they will remain dilated. So this will result in photophobia and blurring of near vision will take place. Apart from this, another action on the eye is increase in the intraocular tension. Okay, under cholinergic drugs, we have seen that intraocular tension was reduced, and drugs like pilocarpine, it was used in the treatment of glaucoma, right? But these drugs, anticholinergic drugs, they tend to rise the intraocular tension. So as a result of this, these are contraindicated in the patients who are suffering from narrow angle glaucoma. Otherwise, it will induce pain or it will worsen the condition. The next effect is on the smooth muscles. Now, all the visceral smooth muscles which are innervated by the M3 receptors. So, these M3 receptors will be blocked by atropine. So, what will happen? All the visceral smooth muscles, these will be relaxed by atropine, because under the cholinergic drugs we have seen that M3 receptors, when they are stimulated, it will result in contraction of the smooth muscle. So obviously M3 blockage will result in relaxation of all the visceral smooth muscles. Okay, so we have seen that there are several visceral organs. We have seen the actions of acetylcholine. We have seen in the GIT, it increases the tone and peristalsis, right? Acetylcholine increases the tone and peristalsis. So what will be the effect of atropine? It will result in reduction of the tone and amplitude of contraction of the stomach and the intestine. So GI motility will be reduced. Okay, contraction of the smooth muscles, it will be abolished. So smooth muscles in your GIT will be relaxed. So what will happen? The tone will not be maintained. The basal tone of the smooth muscles will not be maintained. Peristaltic movement will also get affected. So obviously, because of this, the passage of chyme will slow down. So whatever you are ingesting, it will not move at the normal rate. Its movement will slow down across the GIT. So it can result in constipation. Okay, under the acetylcholine we have seen that because of increase in tone and peristalsis, evacuation of bowel was taking place, right? But here it will result in constipation. It will result in constipation. Apart from that, one more action is that it will relieve the spasm. Okay, so the spasm, that is the contraction of the visceral smooth muscles in the GIT, it will result in the spasm or the colic. So this can also be relieved because of the relaxation of the smooth muscles. But peristalsis, it is actually under the control of the local reflexes, right? Or the other neurotransmitters are also involved in controlling the GI motility and the peristalsis. Okay, so it is incompletely suppressed by atropine because there are other transmitters which can also control the peristaltic movement. Okay, or there are local reflexes which are controlling. There are other hormones which are involved. So they will take care of the peristalsis. So as such, it is incompletely blocked. The peristalsis is incompletely blocked. However, the peristalsis which is induced by the injection of the cholinergic drugs, if you have administered cholinergic drugs and then if you give atropine, it will effectively antagonize the motility. Okay. Then apart from that, other smooth muscles like smooth muscles in the bronchi, these also will be relaxed, right? Under the cholinergic drugs, we have seen that bronchoconstriction takes place, right? Bronchospasm will take place and asthmatic attack can get precipitated. So atropine, it will block the muscarinic receptor and it will result in the relaxation of the smooth muscles in the bronchi, as a result of which bronchodilation will take place and it will also reduce the airway resistance, specifically those in those patients who are suffering from COPD or asthma. Now, apart from producing the bronchodilation, which is the symptomatic relief in the asthma patients, it also has modifying action on the basic pathophysiology of the respiratory diseases. Okay, like say inflammatory mediators are involved, right? PGs, histamine and kinins. These actually increase the vagal activity. Okay, so these are also attenuated by atropine. Okay, so it's not only producing the bronchodilation, but it is also antagonizing or attenuating, decreasing the effectiveness of the mediators which are involved in the pathophysiology. Okay, then apart from that, atropine also relaxes the smooth muscles in the ureters. Okay, ureters which carry the urine from the kidneys to the bladder. Also, it has a relaxant action on the muscles in the urinary bladder. So the relaxation is such a way that it will result in urinary retention. Okay, under cholinergic drugs, we have seen that voiding of bladder takes place, right? Emptying of bladder. It becomes easier to pass the urine. Okay, because of the contraction of the urinary bladder. So here what will happen? The smooth muscles of urinary bladder will relax, as a result of which it will result in urinary retention. There will be voiding difficulty. So specifically this is of more concern in the older males, elderly males, or those who are suffering from prostatic hypertrophy, in whom the prostate gland, it has outgrown, the size has increased. Okay, so in such individuals it will be of more concern, administration of the atropinic drug. However, this type of action, that is urinary retention, it could be of therapeutic importance in those patients, okay, who are unable to hold the or store the urine, okay, in the bladder. Okay, so to increase the bladder capacity, or controlling the detrusor hyperreflexia in neurogenic bladder, or in case of enuresis, that is night bedwetting, okay, wherein involuntary voiding of urine may take place. So to improve the urinary retention in such disorders, this particular property can be utilized of atropine. Whereas relaxation of biliary tracts and the uterus, this is minimal. Okay. The next effect is on the glands. Now atropine, it will markedly decrease the secretions from almost all the types of glands, okay, excluding a few. So under the cholinergic drugs, we have seen that acetylcholine, it enhances the secretion of almost all the types of glands, right? Sweat glands, salivary glands, tracheobronchial glands, lacrimal secretion is increased. Okay, so atropine, by blocking the M3 receptor, it will decrease the sweat, salivary, tracheobronchial and lacrimal secretion. So as a result of this, what will happen? The skin will become dry because sweat is reduced. Eyes will also become dry because lacrimal secretions are also getting reduced. Talking will be difficult, okay, because saliva secretion will be reduced. Swallowing will also be difficult, right? So these are quite common atropinic side effects or anticholinergic side effects, as you can see. Because of decrease in the secretions from several glands, it will produce several types of side effects. Okay, now apart from this, atropine can also decrease the secretion of acid, pepsin and mucus, okay, in the stomach. So this is of concerned now. Decrease in the secretion of acid. So this will be beneficial in the hypersecretory disorders or the ulcer patients. This is quite useful, right? But atropine, it is less effective as compared to the H2 blockers. H2 blockers or even the proton pump inhibitors are even better than the H2 blockers. Okay, so atropine are actually not basically used for decrease in the acid secretion, but yeah, this is one of the action of the atropine. Okay, then intestinal or pancreatic secretions, these are not significantly reduced. Even the bile production, it is not under the cholinergic control, so it is not affected. Okay, only these sweat, salivary, tracheobronchial, lacrimal and secretions from the stomach glands, these are reduced. The next action is on the body temperature. It produces the rise in body temperature. Atropine tends to increase the body temperature. It is known as the atropine fever. Specifically, children are more susceptible towards this rise in body temperature. Okay, now why this body temperature rises is because there are two reasons. One is inhibition of sweating. Just now we have seen that sweat secretion is reduced, right, from the sweat glands. So because of decrease in the sweating, sweat keeps your skin cool, right? So it will evaporate and it will help in keeping your skin cool. So if the sweating decreases, obviously the body temperature will increase. Also, atropine can stimulate the temperature regulating center in the hypothalamus. So these are the two reasons why the body temperature rises when atropine is administered, and this particular effect, atropine fever, it is more prone to small children. Okay. The next action is local anesthetic. Atropine, it has a mild anesthetic action on the cornea of the eye. Okay. Then there are certain other effects also of atropine. It tends to enhance the ACH and the NA release from certain nerve terminals. Now why it is happening, why it is increasing the ACH release? Okay, actually it is the blocker at the muscarinic receptor, right? So because of the same mechanism, it also tends to enhance the ACH release, though it is an anti-muscarinic drug. Now why it is happening is because, if you can recall this figure which we have seen under the cholinergic drugs, the muscarinic receptors, there are certain muscarinic receptors which are located on the cholinergic nerve terminals, right? M2 receptors. These are the autoreceptors which are present on the same type of neuron. Cholinergic receptors are found on the cholinergic neurons. That's why these are known as autoreceptors. Okay, so atropine, it can block all the muscarinic receptors, right? So obviously this is also a muscarinic receptor, so this will also be blocked. Now what is the function of this autoreceptor? We have seen that it inhibits the release of ACH, right? When this autoreceptor is stimulated, it will inhibit the release of acetylcholine which is stored. So what will atropine do? Atropine will block this muscarinic receptor. So as a result of this, what will happen? Opposite action will be produced. So it will enhance the ACH release. Okay, so this is due to the blockage of the release inhibitory muscarinic autoreceptors present in the nerve terminals. Okay, so these are all the pharmacological actions of atropine as a prototype drug. Now the sensitivity of the different organs and tissues towards the atropine is also different. Okay, and you can grade it in this way. The most sensitive types of organs involve the saliva, sweat and bronchial secretions. These are the most sensitive. Okay. Next is the eye, bronchial muscles and the heart. Next comes, less than this, is the smooth muscles of the intestine and the bladder, and least affected are the gastric glands and the other smooth muscles, that is visceral smooth muscles. Okay, so sensitivity towards different organs is differing towards the actions of atropine. Then coming to the pharmacokinetics in brief, atropine and hyoscine, as such, these are lipophilic in nature, so these are rapidly absorbed from the GIT. Even when these are applied to the eye, they can freely penetrate cornea due to their lipid solubility. Passage, however, across the blood-brain barrier is somewhat restricted. If you can compare the two, as compared to atropine. Atropine can cross the blood-brain barrier and produce the central effect only at higher doses, whereas hyoscine, it can cross the blood-brain barrier to a little bit greater extent. So it can produce the CNS effect at the normal doses also, as we have seen under the actions. Then metabolism part, 50% of atropine is metabolized in the liver and remaining 50% is excreted in the unchanged form. T half-life is 3 to 4 hours. Okay, if you can compare with the hyoscine, metabolism of hyoscine is more complete. Okay, and as I have told you earlier, it can cross the blood-brain barrier better as compared to the atropine. Okay, let's stop here. Thank you.